Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Armchair Booking Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Stunning Steve Barber, and joining me as my co-host is the awesome, delicious Dwaylon Davis.
Hey, everybody.
And if you're already watching on video, you already know we have another visitor. We have a guest. It's another part of our series of why we are wrestling fans and longtime listeners, longtime viewers, and actually fans of this man's podcast should already recognize this is Justin from TNC SportsTalk, the throw-in with Justin, which I was able to watch this morning.
Yeah,
because I was up that early. So
I know, such a crazy time. Get up at 7.
I was actually up at like 5:30, and also I got the notification. I was like, all right, cool. I'll finally get a chance to actually watch it, because normally at that time I'm literally driving, and they kind of frown on you, for like watching YouTube while you're drowning. While you're driving. So, but I finally got a chance to do it live, which I actually enjoyed and was making comments. And Justin, thank you so much for the shout outs you were giving us this morning. I do appreciate it.
Throughout the time, I always find a way. I've put some like pre-dialogue I set aside of promotion stuff, like, thanking the products that I use, but I always have armchair booking on that I got to read every single episode. It's kind of like a religion, sacrilegion thing I have to do every episode.
Yeah,
we appreciate it.
Yep, we feel the same way. But we try to make sure we mention you. And I don't have it written down. I probably should have written down, because the list is actually kind of growing. Because it's part of the podcasting world. I mean, we've been making so many connections, and you were one that reached out to us back in the fall, early winter of 2021, and we've been collaborating ever since. I mean, it's been great.
Yeah, I love the community that we've learned over the last couple of years.
And maybe one day Dwaylon will come up here and he'll get to meet you in person too.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I'll be looking forward to that.
But before we go ahead and get started, Justin, go ahead and tell people how they can get a hold of you, because as our friend Ted the Hillbilly Hill pointed out, and we've kind of built on his lead, a lot of people don't listen all the way to the end of a podcast, so we want to go ahead and give your contact info out. How does somebody find TNC SportsTalk, and how they find you on social media? Just anything that you want to tell them.
Well, so mainly right now I'm doing a show called The Throw-In on the TNC SportsTalk YouTube page. It's weekdays from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. They're live for the most part. Now it's just me producing and hosting and all of the above. So if I change the schedule a little bit, I try to communicate, but sometimes they're changed on the go. But I also can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and TikTok, although I'm more active on Facebook and TikTok. And then if you guys want to DM me, you guys can DM me that way. I'm always open to sports conversations, possibly try to book a guest or two on the show, or even just a recording and having on the show later. And then also you could download the throw-in up on audio platforms: Spreaker, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Matter of fact, every podcast you could follow that you get Armchair Booking Podcast from, because I believe you still have Spreaker, right? As
heck yeah, we
your
do.
main.
Yep.
So you're the one who actually introduced that to me, and I've been using it, and it's actually been great. So I love it.
And what's wild is, if you were to, have you Googled your podcast, like actually looked it up?
I have not, just because I've been in and out of it since this past year, because there's been some, good times and bad times last year. Right. So I haven't really focused myself, and to be honest, I'm trying not to focus. I'm just trying to, put a product out there for people to listen to, enjoy, and get involved into the conversation.
It's amazing. If you Google it, you'll find yourself on all sorts of other third-party platforms. Mm-hmm. And people are using, in fact, I'll go ahead and give our contact listing info real quick as well. If you want to email the show, it's at armchairbookingpodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to find us on Facebook, it's facebook.com/armchairbookingpodcast. You can find us on Instagram, also at Armchair Booking. You can find us on Twitter at Booking Armchair. You can find us on TikTok at Armchair Booking. if you're on YouTube already, you know this is the only video platform that we know of that we're on. By the way, the intro video that we have, Justin is the one who created that.
That's right.
So I got to give him all the credit in the world for that one. And as far as audio platforms go, just like Justin's, we're on just about any audio platform you can think of. If we're not there, let one of us know. We'll do what we can to get ourselves added. I can't guarantee we're going to be successful because I still can't get us on Pandora. And apparently Stitcher, it's not even uploading to Stitcher anymore either. And they're connected. So I don't know what I did there. So I apologize if you were a Stitcher listener and all of a sudden, but hopefully the people, somebody, if they were using Stitcher, they'll reach out. That actually happened when we switched to Spreaker. The feed changed. Somebody reached out to me like 4 months later and said, "Hey, did you stop recording?" I said, "Oh no." And I gave him the new feed. He's like, "Oh, great. Fantastic." So, but you can also find his merch. In fact, you have merch as well, tpublic.com/user/armchair-booking-podcast. And you have merch as well. I know that because I bought a shirt.
Yes. I haven't that in quite some time. I believe it's the same layout, just TNC Sports Talk. I'll have to hopefully maybe just shoot you the link.
Okay.
For I don't think nothing's changed.
And you can also have another podcast called The Cubicle Chat. That's my non-wrestling podcast. Both Dwaylen and Justin have been guests in that podcast at different times. That's where we decided, you know what, we love wrestling, but we do know other things besides wrestling.
Right.
And Justin, actually, his podcast is a overall sports, but he includes wrestling, and he's also a big wrestling fan, and of course, that's why he is on our show today. Dwaylen, also, you can reach out with him. You can find him on Twitter at @fat_daddy73. The reason why it's Fat Daddy is because he's Fat Daddy along with his wife, who is Big Mama. Together, they have Big and Fat, which they have a YouTube channel and a TikTok channel, which Dwaylen just uploaded a video last week, I believe.
Yep.
So go check those out. And one more thing, and this is what I was going to tell you, Justin, when I Googled our podcast, I was actually seeing what third-party platforms we were on. I was shocked to find out we are on IMDb.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, okay. And our guest last week, Kyle, he pointed out that it might be because we have the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So that, and because we didn't put it on there. So you have your YouTube channel. You might be on IMDb as well.
I'm going to have to look into that. Absolutely. I'm not very sure, I'm open. If my podcast is out there and people want to, throw it out to somewhere else. Anyone who wants to grab it, take it, I'm not too big about it. As long as people are listening and, they're listening every day, then I'm okay.
Yep. Ooh, so that's all right, Dwaylen?
Yeah, that's it.
It seems like it keeps expanding.
Yeah.
And I do know we've actually showed up in the ratings. I know your show has showed up in the ratings, like the top 200 for wrestling podcasts. So that's always kind of a cool thing to see. I don't know how their algorithm works, but I do know if people give us ratings. Speaking of which, I have not checked the ratings today, Dwaylen.
Can I ask you guys a quick question?
Go ahead, Justin.
Would you guys know how the Power Top 500 rankings for wrestling, for the male wrestlers work?
The PWI?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how they do that.
I was reading some of that earlier this year. Last week, actually, last couple of weeks, and I was sharing that on one of my programs, and I was like, I don't understand how some of this works and how they get graded to be at a certain level when, what do they base it off of? Because I'm like, someone's at 89, they should probably be at like 56.
Yeah, that's like with the tag teams. Like the Usos ended up getting like number 1 in PWI when, in my opinion, it really should have. Not to say that the Usos had, didn't deserve to be near the top because they're having a great run, but FTR should have been the top team because they were literally winning championships everywhere.
Well, so I guess that's my other question, is because that's Usos are limited to what they could do inside the WWE.
Exactly.
As of recently, FTR is able to branch off and do other promotions, which gives them that upper advantage of. And so I don't know if they consider that. Also,
I don't know
much of an impact they effect into that program. Like I don't know about you guys, and I know how people have, their foot in and out of Austin Theory, but he did impact WWE for at least a good amount of, the last year. And then Seth Rollins, he was just named by Fox, won a whole bunch of awards, and he's down in the ratings, while CM Punk, on the other hand, he's in the top 5. And I'm like, that just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense when he had a combined 8-day championship reign over 2 reigns because he couldn't stay healthy enough to defend the title either time. So,
right. So I was just curious.
Oh yeah, the ratings. If you give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, it's the only one you can do it on. But if you give us a 5-star rating along with a review, I will read the review on the air. And so far, and I have done that. If you give us a 5-star rating on another platform that allows you to do ratings, like Spotify is one that lets you, Good Pods is one that will let you. But if you send me the screenshot of the 5-star rating, and then you also send me, of course, what your review would be, I will also read that on the air. And so just put it out there. You want to hear your name on a podcast, that's how you do it.
I like that way.
So, but definitely go check out, if you've never checked out Justin's podcast, TNC Sports Talk, The Throwing with Justin. I get that it's kind of early in the morning, but you can always catch it, after the fact, and it's still really good. You just can't chat like I was doing this morning.
That's the one thing.
So Justin, tell us about yourself. I mean, how long have you been a wrestling fan? I mean,
oh gosh. So me dating back as a wrestling fan is to practically when they started the whole SmackDown Fist.
Okay.
Entrance. Maybe a little before that, on and off. But I was maybe gravitating to more of like specific guys like The Undertaker, maybe John Cena, right? And at least to my recollection, that's where I started. But I grew up a SmackDown person because growing up, having school, I lived on the West Coast, which at the time when the Raw was on Spike TV, they had they started their programs at 9 p.m. and I'm like, that's bedtime, and my parents wouldn't let me stay up, so I got a chance to watch Friday Night SmackDown, or Tuesday night. I got lucky to at least watch an hour when it was on at 8. So as far back, I want to say maybe the early maybe about like 2003, 2002.
Wow. So right about the time that WWF was becoming WWE.
Right. Yeah. And then you also had, the whole SmackDown started splitting off and, having that own stuff, the own fun. I believe blue, unfortunately, when it comes down to wrestling. SmackDown's always been my home, and unfortunately it always will be. There's just something I like about the aura that SmackDown brings.
Well, it was always, for the longest, it was like the wrestling show of the two brands. You had your more sports entertainment and all the crazy stuff going on Monday Night Raw. And then on SmackDown, you got, for the most part, actual good wrestling matches.
Now, I do want to also just include this just because it's involving into how I also became a wrestling fan. I don't know if that was something you're going to ask you in a moment, but my wrestling, from the first moment I knew I was watching wrestling, I was hooked onto it, was the moment I saw The Undertaker on that screen. I'm sorry, but there was just something about him that made everything just seem so right. And so no matter what he played, it was always just tuning in just to see what's next, because he was always mysterious. You could kind of predict some of the other wrestlers and what they were able to do, but when it came down to The Undertaker, his mind games were something unimaginable. And then when you could take it out off the screen and actually display it, backstage or in a graveyard, and then just tie all that together, like one of my very first favorite moments was the feud between Taker and Randy Orton. That whole year-long feud that kind of shaped Orton to who he was today.
wow, a year-long feud, Dwaylen. Imagine that.
I know that's
That's
very rare.
yeah, it's almost unheard of now. Uh, wow. And so, I actually had a thought in my head, and it just kind of disappeared all of a sudden. It happens to me quite often. Dwaylen can tell you. I mean, he has to keep me in check. He says, "No, you've been thinking about this." But um, so besides the Undertaker, which by the way, I think yeah, seeing the Undertaker, yeah, that'll do it. I mean, because you just seeing him on the screen like that, because he was one of my favorite, was probably still is one of my favorites of all time. Even though he doesn't wrestle more. He said he's retired, he's done. But who are some of your other favorite wrestlers?
I grew up watching John Cena, The Big Show, right? You had then Kurt Angle, JBL, Edge, Eddie Guerrero for that short period of time. Am I allowed to say the other guy's name on the show?
Yeah, I don't have any issue with it, Dwayne.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Chris Benoit. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to be sure. But yeah, I mean,
but honestly, just that's a case where we separate the art from the artist.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I just grew up. I love watching him in the ring. In the ring,
yeah,
he
same.
was phenomenal, great.
Yeah, in ring, he's one of the.
Much.
Yeah, he's, in my opinion, he is still just in ring skills one of the greatest technical wrestlers we've ever seen.
Yeah, one of my favorite feuds watching and just being able to watch him was him and MVP. I once at WrestleMania for the United States Championship. It's unbelievable. Just you could learn so much. And the other thing is that the reason I also love about him is, maybe there was also during the time frame where you didn't know about their out of the ring stuff unless it broke news, like a DUI or a lawsuit. So, that stuff kind of kept at a young age for me, quiet. And that's what I loved so much about it. And then I started gravitating into when Finley came back and started competing. They were so, I want to say they were underrated, but I really enjoyed watching Billy Kidman and Paul London. I don't know if you remember when they were teaming up for that time period. When I'm thinking of all these names, I apologize. They're just kind of
no,
coming out of my head, and I can't remember them. But if the tag team division or the women's division at the time was lacking, they didn't really let you see it. Like you couldn't notice it on a regular program,
right?
If that makes sense. So, I mean, you had a little bit of everything, but so one thing I will say as of recently, and this actually probably dated back since I graduated from high school about a decade ago, was that I've learned to appreciate so much. I have a vast appreciation of JBL because it was kind of him leading the heel side of SmackDown, carrying SmackDown quite some time. And if it wasn't for his heel character, I mean, you wouldn't have made names out of Batista and Rey Mysterio, and all those.
Really, I mean, John Cena was, he was right there on the cusp of being a main event guy, but without that feud with JBL, it could have been another year or two before he got to the top.
And that's what I appreciate about such those type of generation athletes, guys like Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, Kane, is that they knew when their time was to give back, and it wasn't about making sure that they got over. It was making sure that these younger guys were getting over, so that when there was time for them to step away, these guys are in good hands,
right?
And I don't know. I mean, I don't quite see that as much anymore. And they over exaggerate it when they do push that.
Yeah, because they're still, I mean, they've done better since Triple H has taken over. But when Vince was in charge, he relied way too much on the part-timers instead of putting that focus and energy into creating new stars. So it's like, we still don't have a lot of the stars that a lot of the wrestlers that should be big stars by now aren't, because of, how they've been booked, not because they couldn't get over.
And what's the term, Dwaylen, when they want to book somebody for like a real quick it escapes me, and we used to use it all the time, but we apparently have not used it in a long time. But it'll bring an audience in, but it's just a real quick temporary.
Oh yeah. I can't think of it. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like right there, but I can't.
I mean, we've been forgetting people's names lately.
I know. We're getting old, man.
We are. And
one thing we noticed though is that this is not an old conversation. We've been probably talking about this off, these podcasts for years, where we're saying, all right, where is the WWE going to be like in 7 to 10 years from today if they don't start building these guys up? And look how long it took. Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, and even Roman Reigns to get to where they're at today took them well over a year. And it's like, all right, who are the guys behind them? And they're not quite getting that starlight. I mean, they're still relying on guys. I mean, Sheamus and Drew McIntyre, as much as I appreciate them, they're up in the age too, where they're kind of like a Randy Orton and John Cena now in the WWE.
But you look at a Bobby Lashley, who is, in their age bracket, who is still putting people over. Bobby is
Bobby Lashley like Tom Brady of WWE. He seems to get better as he gets older, right?
He does. He
looks
really
like
does.
He's in his early 30s. He does not look like he's aged.
I think he's like 43 or 44.
He's actually older than Brock Lesnar, if I'm not mistaken.
Lashley is?
Yeah, I believe you're right. Yeah.
Because remember, if I'm not mistaken, Bobby Lashley, didn't he try to play football and then MMA, or was it strictly MMA?
Straight to MMA.
Yeah, because he was in the Army.
Yeah.
And he got hurt. I don't remember. It wasn't like the bank robbery he stopped, was it? When they got him hurt, or was it a car wreck or something like that?
I'm not sure. I think it might have been a car wreck, but I'm not 100% sure.
Because he also did stop a bank robbery.
Mm-hmm.
Because how many people can put that on their resume?
Yeah.
And he looks so young, though.
He does.
He doesn't look like since he first came in when he came back with the ECW.
Yeah.
And and talking about us getting old, Justin, I have to say real quick, you said you graduated 10 years ago. What do we say, Waylon?
10 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, you got to bump those numbers.
You got to bump those numbers up.
Those are rookie numbers. You got to bump those up. I mean, we're looking at
32.
We're looking at 32 years this year that we graduated high school.
Yep, from Christian County High School down in Hopkinsville.
Well, I appreciate you guys making me feel a little bit younger. I appreciate it. Like, okay, so I still consider myself young. I'm only 27. I'll be 28 this year. But I'm like, okay, you guys, these people coming up, they're kids now, in the sense, I think of Austin Theory, and I think of Austin Theory, and I'm like, yeah, now I could call him a kid, coming up through the program. Shoot.
So living out, because I believe you're from San Diego, correct?
Yes. Born and raised.
And you were a Chargers fan up until they moved to LA?
Yeah, I was a San Diego's fan by default. They moved up to LA. It's like, you know what? They kind of sold out on me. So I went to converted to the Rams. And then I'm still a Padres fan, but I do support the local sports team, Cincinnati Bengals and the Reds. I mean, I think that's fair, right?
Yeah.
I mean, last year's Super Bowl, I said Rams all the way. I was happy regardless who won. It was kind of win-win for me.
And I know you saw the fumble because you showed it this morning on your show. Dwaylen, did you see that?
No, I hadn't seen it. I've seen the chatter on Twitter about it, but I hadn't seen the video.
That was a 98-yard fumble return for what ended up being
the game. Touched the ground. It was just knocked out of Tyler's hands in the air because he was jumping over when should have went down, and that was kind of listen, and that's the other thing. You're going to see the Bills this coming up weekend, and I got to tell you, both teams did not look good the last couple of weeks, and it's going to be a very emotional game and very especially since there's no offensive line again for Joe Burrow.
Apparently they were putting defensive linemen in on the offensive line. Yeah, I heard you say that this morning. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So, but you being from San Diego,
okay. There's no Von Miller for the Bills, so I don't have to worry about that.
I think it's going to be a highly viewed game because the Monday night game, of course, before the unfortunate thing happened, it was like the most viewed game of the year for all of the NFL. And then, so this one I have a feeling is going to also be, it may actually surpass whatever the ratings were for the first matchup.
I have high expectations for this game coming up this weekend, Sunday, 3 p.m., I believe. I just think that this game is going to be a good game for the wrong reasons. And because all the injuries and, the mistakes that Josh Allen made last week. Because listen, Josh Allen gave up that lead and, not Josh Allen, but the Bills gave up that lead at the end of the first half, and they probably shouldn't even won the game, but.
Either way, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing it, and because I'll support the Bengals because I live here.
Yeah.
So, my team though is the Raiders. Joyland's team is the Packers.
Yeah.
Neither one of them made the playoffs, and so we just kind of latch on to whoever right now. But being from San Diego, what was like the main, I guess if you want to call it, local wrestling there? Because I know you're close in San Diego is real, like right there at the Mexican border. So you would have like AAA, and you would have some of the other Mexican wrestling organizations, with the luchadors. Were you able to get exposed to that when you were living out there?
Okay, so growing up out there on the West Coast, and at least limited to me, all right, was WWE was the main viewing platform, right, for professional wrestling. Then it came TNA out there that was actually aired cable wise. When they were on Spike and all that stuff, when they first started off, and that was a big thing. We started seeing New Japan late at night. I'm talking about like a Saturday night at like a rerun on ESPN, type thing. We started getting Lucha Underground also. But we never really got anything, certain. We didn't get no Ring of Honor. We didn't get no OVW. And I don't know if they still do, but like we missed out on a lot of that opportunity to get exposed. And even, like AAA wasn't necessarily aired. And when they aired them, they were such weird timings. We're talking about 2-3 o'clock in the morning where it's like, is this just a recording from like years ago?
Right.
Or is this actually like recent? And then you also didn't quite understand, because for me, it takes me a couple weeks to get into a program because you got to know the backstory and I can't just jump into it. And they didn't tell that story just right. So you couldn't get gravitated to it. But yeah, unfortunately there was really just nothing out there. Like now you can see here and NWA, WCCW, right? WCCW, or is it you got WOW out here?
You're talking about there's World Class Championship Wrestling. That was WCCW back in the day, based out of Dallas. And then you have WCW, World Championship Wrestling.
That's You have NWA out here that you could easily access. WOW for women's out here that's still going on. I guess my overall, NWF, there's more bigger like promotions out here for wrestling that get spread around very easily than you do see on the West Coast.
Yep, because that was actually one of the things. Were you able to catch a lot of live events out in San Diego?
They would have come down once or twice a year, and it would always be Raw and then SmackDown, Raw and then SmackDown. This was a time when SmackDown was being taped on Tuesdays, so getting a chance to go to SmackDown and tell all your friends what happened the rest of the week and make start betting on matches and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, we got a chance to go. They didn't have a lot of pay-per-views. That's something I really kind of wish they had more of down there. But the sports center down there just wasn't, the building was kind of, outdated. The one biggest pay-per-view I was there to see was the 2008 Extreme Rules, and that one was with when Jeff Hardy did the Swan Tom off the semi truck to Umaga.
Yeah.
Right outside Triple. That was, I think, wasn't that the time where Randy Orton got hurt facing Triple H, and he got thrown over the ring and just, I think, broke his collarbone?
That was Edge. That was him and Edge.
Was that Edge?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then you had, JBL. I want to say it was JBL and John Cena, and then the main event was a TLC match with Edge and The Undertaker.
Mm-hmm.
That was for the
no. You were right. It was Triple H and Randy Orton. You were right. Triple H did throw him over the top rope, and when he landed, he broke his collarbone. Yep, you were right.
So, that was probably the most memorable pay-per-view. I know there's a couple other ones, but I think if you had to walk away with one, that's probably the most memorable one. And they always had the good stuff up in LA or Anaheim. So, we always got the, lackey stuff. I don't think I've ever been to a SmackDown or a Raw in San Diego where Rey Mysterio actually won a match.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Well, that's their whole hometown thing. I mean, if you're in hometown, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and here's the other thing. I think the first ever SmackDown I went to was when Rey Mysterio and the Big Show faced off for the first time.
Oh, wow. Was that the one where he put him on the board?
Yes.
Swung him against the ring post?
Yep.
Oh,
yeah.
So, yeah, that's how far back I'm trying to remember further back, but I was also big going out to those events and getting those programs. I don't know if you've gotten those where they were SmackDown one side and you flipped it the other way. You had Raw on the other side, and the commentators were in the middle.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I enjoyed those ones.
And Dwaylen, right now we're missing Raw, and it's happening. For me, it's about 28 miles. For Justin, it's probably a little bit closer.
It's like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, because Raw is in Cincinnati tonight. And it's not, well, for me, a little bit of a money thing, because right after Christmas, money is always tight.
Always.
And not only that, but for me, it's also, I'm not going to go to something like that without my son.
Oh, yeah, definitely not. Yeah.
But I'm also not going to have him out until past 11 o'clock at night on a school night.
Yeah.
Even they have a 2-hour delay tomorrow because for teacher in service.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd rather not have him out that late. Now, the last time I did have him out that late for anything, this was for the Hatebreed Trivia on Lamb of God Megadeth concert, but that one was fine. You know why? Because of the names I just mentioned.
Right.
That was just a fun time all around.
I'll say this though, for that behalf, is that the last few times WWE has been out here, it has been for Raw, and not saying this was a year or two ago when the product wasn't the best at its best. So it was like you're spending $40-$60 on top of that, driving to there, paying another $20 for parking. Everything you get is at least $5-10 a pop type thing. So I mean, if you're quite missing out on anything.
Right.
Of course, I mean, I will see, the people on Facebook, especially the wrestling friends we have, they'll go. I mean, it's almost like they're obligated to go, but you can't get mad at them for it.
Right. No.
But so if you don't mind me asking, since you have a little bit of knowledge around where I really started watching wrestling, like I said, I was more remembrance of the fist era when they had the fist going through the glass as the entrance. What were your guys' maybe favorite moment coming out of that time period?
You talking about around 2002-ish, 2003?
Talking about, I think it was like about 2003 to I think it was like 2008 before they just went with the big jumbo screen.
I enjoyed the stuff with the SmackDown 6. Trying to think what else. The Undertaker Orton feud you were talking about was good. Trying to think what else.
Or even if it was on Raw. I mean,
I mean, honestly, I can't think of anything because that was also during a period I actually was watching less wrestling. Yes, because my daughter was born, then I went to Kuwait, and then I came back, and my schedule went all weird for a little bit, where I was actually working a second shift. I mean, you know how it is. You trying to watch do anything. And then I just really just wasn't watching it as much just because we were doing other things. And then I went to Korea, and then I went to England, and so you're trying to catch everything. It was I was able to catch a lot of stuff on the internet. That's how I was able to keep track of it, but I was not able to really watch anything live. And so I can't really give a good answer for any of that.
Yeah, for me, I enjoyed the early days of SmackDown up until like through the SmackDown 6, but then there for quite a while, it's just both shows got kind of hard to watch because it was just kind of repetitive. It was like the same stuff on both shows, and it's like creative got stale. It's like they couldn't figure out how to. I mean, they had this giant roster, but couldn't figure out how to capitalize on the talent that they had.
Well, I also saw because SmackDown was always, in my opinion, obviously lower than Raw. So when they brought guys like CM Punk over, or they brought Batista over, right? Rey Mysterio moved back and forth when Randy Orton was there. I felt like a lot of those guys moved to SmackDown to get their name, and then they got put onto Raw to obtain it, like John Cena, Kurt Angle, all them. But then you saw guys like Edge and JBL who kind of, and then like I mentioned, The Undertaker. Even Triple H at one point was on SmackDown for a period of time. But there was guys that came back over to SmackDown to really help carry SmackDown. And when you were for a good period between, I want to say 2003, maybe 2004 to like at least 2010, I would say SmackDown relied on a small handful of guys and you're going to have to mention it. The Undertaker was number one on that list to keep SmackDown going for that time frame. JBL, Edge, maybe Batista for a while. But when I was watching, like I said, SmackDown was just my thing. It was watch it every Friday night. And it was on from 10 to 8 to 10, and then that's how your weekend started. But I mean, for me, those were really entertaining days. And then after, I want to say maybe after 2010, when they started combining that roster, maybe a year or two into it, that's really started when it started lagging.
I can see that.
So as far as like live events, now I know you've been to some live events because we've actually hung out at live events. Now, could you give a count of how many you've been to, or if you're kind of like me, especially?
Are you including NWF?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Wrestling is wrestling.
Okay. So I would say approximately probably around 40 plus, no more than 50. And I also want to mention is that one thing I did discover before moving out here, and that was probably back, about 2018, 2019, is that they, just like NWF, they have local wrestling promotions, and they have a promotion out there called SoCal Wrestling. So I got a chance to see at a not a fan. They had this Del Mar Fairgrounds out there. They did some live wrestling outside just to promote their business, and they had the Honky Tonk Man out there. So, but he was charging like $50 for an autograph and a picture. And I don't know, you hear about John Moxley, who came into town yesterday to do autograph signing at the Cavalcade of Custom. I got a friend who got me a autograph signing. I don't know if you guys could see it, but I was told that in order to get a picture was like $40 just to get a picture with John Moxley.
I can, you know what? After going to a couple of the fan fests up in Chillicothe, I can believe it, because they're having another one on March 11th, and some of the, let's see, Kane, we paid $100.
Yeah.
The NWO, which was Nash, Bagwell, and Scott Steiner, we paid $200 because I didn't realize at the time $100 could have covered both me and my son. And of course, they're like, oh well.
Yeah, it's too late now. You're already paid.
The one who I was glad I met him, I don't know if I would have paid this much, before we already did the autographs. But he did give us a lot though. Was Tatanka. Tatanka was awesome, super nice guy. It was $80, and I was like, okay, but he gave us a lot more than just an autograph picture. I mean, he gave us like this whole package of stuff. I mean, it was actually really, and it was like a lot of pictures, and it was really cool. He was, a great dude, and we were talking about because, he's from, well, he said he grew up mostly in Virginia, but he's from originally Pembroke, North Carolina, which is like the next county over from where I lived in North Carolina. So I said, yeah, Aberdeen. He's like, oh, okay, so we got to talking about, kind of that local area. But most of them it was 24 a picture, 24 an autograph, 30 if you want both.
Damn. So, I mean, I guess it is curious. I mean, at what point do you think paying just for an autograph, like, okay, like, let's be honest, this is made out to me, which he didn't even write my name all the way, and it has an autograph. So is there a sense of like, unless it comes with, for me, and maybe I'm just, overspeaking it, but an autograph for 40, or a picture for $40, I think that's just a little too pricey depending who you are. I also wouldn't necessarily, like Kevin Nash. Okay, I could see you spending that type of money to see him, for what he's done for the wrestling, wrestling companies around the world. But I don't know. Do you think John Moxley is worth at that level?
Moxley, yeah, $40.
Okay.
He could have charged more.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Easily. And it kind of depends on the event. With Moxley being a Cincinnati native anyway, that's something else that people are going to go and see him. Now, a few months ago, I saw an event. It was here in right down the road in Williamsburg, Ohio, which is a town right next to Mount Orb. And this was not an NWF show. It was Ascension Pro Wrestling, which apparently they are like rivals with NWF.
Okay.
But there was some of the same wrestlers that from NWF that were also in this show, like Lord Crew. Love Lord Crew. Dude's awesome. But he was also there. Well, in addition to that, they had Lance Archer and Jimmy Hart. They were there doing autographs and pictures. But for them, it was 15. And I'm going to guess because it was a local event. It wasn't like a fan fest. I mean, they just happened to be at an indie show. Jimmy Hart probably could have charged more. But, I mean, if you're a wrestling fan and you know who Jimmy Hart is. Lance Archer, I mean, coming from AEW, because I actually talked to him about coming on the podcast. And he said, yeah, you have to go through AEW's, their PR.
Gotcha.
So I was like, yeah, I mean, he was, super cool guy. He's another one of those. Thankfully, he's a super cool guy because, man, that dude's massive.
Yeah, he's huge.
Yeah. And, of course, Jimmy Hart, I mean, he basically shoved the microphone or the megaphone into my chest and here, hold this. I was like, all right, I'm holding Jimmy Hart's megaphone, so he had me hold the megaphone for the pictures. He was another super great guy. But I think since that was at a local indie show, that's why they dropped it down to like 15. And 15 for the picture, and I usually don't do autographs. It kind of depends on, whereas my son, last one we went to up in Chillicothe, of course we met Kane, and my son also wanted to get an autograph picture of Jake Roberts, Jake the Snake. And so we got Jake. He talked to my son for a little bit, just, hey, hey buddy, hey, how you doing? I mean, he was real nice. Nicole Roberts, baby doll, same thing. We talked to her, and it was weird because she and I had a weird interaction like 3 years ago dealing with her cable at her house. And so I just was asking her, hey, remember that? That was me. Was everything cool? She said, oh yeah, she told me what's going on. So I finally got closure on that. That's been on my mind, Waylon. You know that.
Yeah.
So, but there were some other ones that I didn't know how much they were, but I found out like Jerry Lawler and Lex Luger were also there. But they were charging like 40 and, 40 a piece. And there were some other ones who were there as well. Mr. Hughes, he's always at those events. Or I don't know, where's Mr. Hughes? Where's he from, Dwaylen? You have any idea?
I have no clue. I mean, he's been around, seems like he's been around for as long as I've been watching wrestling. And I know that's not the case, but it's like especially like late 80s through the 90s. It's like everywhere you looked, he was there.
I'm going to have to look him up because I think he might be from somewhere close to here.
Call me crazy on this, but in all honesty, I've learned, something I've learned over the last couple of years is that, knowledge is the best form of anything, right? If you could gain knowledge, it's always going to help you. I would always recommend trading in a handshake, an autograph, a picture, hell, I'll even trade, I won't even, anything to do with them. If I could just maybe have 2, 3, 5 minutes of their time and just ask them a question or two about, maybe a scenario. Like the one thing that I wish because Honky Tonk Man was, charging so much and I couldn't afford it. But one thing I've always wanted to ask and I've always wanted to pick, and it's going to be so hard, is that with me being a diehard Undertaker fan, okay, I love Taker, all right? And I, went to the point I've watched almost every match that he's had, from his debut. And Honky Tonk Man was part of that Survivor Series match where he teamed up, with Ted DiBiase and The Undertaker. And I was always like, knowing The Undertaker and where he's at now and what type of legacy he's lead on, the world of professional wrestling, knowing that standing in that ring 1990. And I'm like, kind of like, what is it like? He's probably just, just kind of pick his brain a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when you get to guys like, Chris Harris over here in, NWF, and when the Monster Abyss was inducted to the NWF, Hall of Fame last year, for me, I don't want an autograph. I just want to pick your brain. I just want to hear the stories and just get your reaction and thoughts, maybe things that you never thought someone would ask you about,
And you've had Chris Harris on your show as well, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah, he loves sitting down and talking wrestling. He's such a great dude, and every time I see him now at shows, he always goes over, says hi. I mean, he's
well, I think we started breaking that because when we had the Jay and Trey podcast at the beginning of the year last year, and we had Chris Harris on, I believe that was one of his first interviews coming, being part of NWF, and he's kind of opened up, and now I see him everywhere. Like you turn around, he's still doing stuff with Impact Wrestling and all over the world.
You had him on before we did.
Yeah.
Because I even told Joellen, I was like, man, we need to step up our game.
Yeah.
So,
well, I believe if I'm not mistaken, it was Trey that was starting to give you the information and said, hey, go get Chris Harris. You could talk to him.
Yeah, I still call him Fearless Trey, which Trey and Courtney, they were at the last Mount Orb show.
Yeah, I was actually, I've been unfortunate. I have not been able to get to a lot of things have happened that I'm not going to get into on air, but I wish I could go, and I want to go, and hopefully here soon I could go back again, because a lot of great things are still going. They're still transpiring and, evolving. And, I've seen in between the NWF has their own podcast, I believe.
Yep, they do. Yep, the Power Pod.
I'm like, yep. And I'm like, dude, they're growing, and they're finally, something that was told that, Roger would never bend towards, and like, and it's like, that's great.
They haven't put out a new episode in a while. I don't know what's up with that. December 15th. That's the last episode they put out. So it's been a month. Maybe. And but you and I need to get together again anyway, because I still have your microphone. So
I just, oh my goodness, I don't know. I'm like, at this point, I'm just like, just keep it. If you could use it, keep it. Because I got that I believe I got that like at Five Below like 2 years ago, and thinking that I was gonna need it, and I don't really quite need that almost, So, not at least not at the time, but we'll see each other. I'm afraid to go to NWF, and then you're like, man, I finally run into, and you're like, I forgot.
Oh no, I always make sure I have the microphone with me just in case.
Yeah.
You're able to make it. Because that was such a weird jumble mess up of a day, how I ended up with Justin's microphone in my bag, and because I had the bright idea, hey, I'll do some interviews while they're doing their thing. That didn't happen for a lot of reasons. And so I lesson learned. I'm not going to try to I'm going to make sure, first of all, I get a better place to set up. Another thing is, don't be set up right next to the speaker where you can barely hear yourself. And also, you can't interview the wrestlers when they're actually signing autographs. They're doing the meet and greets with the fans.
Right. I think I think that's a great idea. If that's something that you're going to do together, maybe you and I could get together and try to collaborate on doing just one big thing and sharing, maybe splitting costs, or, I don't care if you take all the credit, but listen, for NWF, that was their first event like that. And they had to learn a lot of mishaps. I thought, I also heard that there was other podcasters there trying to get interviews. And so I also think that if we're going to do something like that, and they could work with us, do it like before, like a couple hours before, like where there's no one in there, and we could, spend one-on-one time. Hey, rapid fire, interviews, 5-10 minute interviews to get a word in, stuff like that. Because I tried doing it on the show where, we were going to get so-and-so on the show, and that worked up until they stopped wanting to reply back. And it wasn't them, but, they were busy, but it was like, this great idea just blows up,
Yep. And that day, not only that, but the internet connection was horrible. And you need, because I use Zoom, and actually since you use StreamYard, both of them, you need an internet connection, and you need a pretty decent internet connection, and didn't have it. Had an internet connection. But everybody was on it. So, so I mean, like I said, it was a good idea on paper. But just there's some things we could have done a little bit different. And Justin was trying to help me out, quite a bit.
I remember you were telling me about that.
Yeah, because
we were supposed to get a table too, and then we come to find out we didn't have a table, and so it's like everything is just, I don't know, was all clustered. I mean, and listen, like, there's no one to blame. You can't blame no one out of it. It
was their very first time doing this particular thing. So I mean, it was, like I said, it was lessons learned for everybody. The show itself was still phenomenal. That match with Nikki Victory and was it Kylie Ray?
Yes.
That was, oh my God, Waylon. That match right. I know you've heard about it, but I mean that match right there just. Ooh, and Big Mama, and I don't remember who she was wrestling. That was another match that was like next level. We saw Riley Matthews get awarded the PGWA Rookie of the Year, which she had no idea. So her reaction when she just kind of fell to her knees in tears, I mean, that was real. So because they just totally blindsided her in a good way, with that award. But we kind of figured out, kind of life of podcasters, and trying to get people to respond back to you. And fortunately, Dwalen's actually met some other people, just a chance meeting out of all places
at
SummerSlam.
Went to SummerSlam. My wife and I went to SummerSlam last year, and ran into some fellow podcasters, and we ended up later on talking,
the Wrestling Society, the Wrestling Society podcast. And they're actually out of, I think the main guys are out of Georgia. And, I do want to go ahead and give some shout outs to some other podcasts. Justin, while I got it, Ted the Hillbilly Hill, the Hill Truth. If you don't listen to him, go check him out. He is the most, like, we call him the pod father, but I mean, he's the one who has been connecting people.
Absolutely.
So not just him, but we also have Wrestling with the Truth. Our friends, BC and J. See, we remember the names this time.
There you go.
But BC and J, they're actually out of Nova Scotia, Canada, and they're supposed to be on the show this coming Thursday. So also doing the same series. Another couple of great guys. They have a very similar. They're running a series as well. They're talking about the Monday Night Wars, more or less kind of focusing on Nitro right now. But I mean, another two guys that are just extremely knowledgeable when it comes to wrestling. Let's see, the Wrestling World podcast with Austin Boyer. He's one single guy. I mean, he does it all himself. Let's see what's with others. The NWF Power Pod. You got to go check that one out if you haven't already. I know I'm missing some more, Dwaylen, some more wrestling ones, and I mean, and I'm going to mention some non-wrestling ones too.
Yeah, there's just there's so many good ones out there.
The Smack Raw podcast, Botch Bots and Chair Shots. They're actually kind of linked together. In fact, the Smack Raw podcast, their guys, this is a little personal. Their guys, they actually just recently talked about they're both um, they were both kind of open about mental health issues and
Mhm.
also sobriety issues. And they said, you know what, we're not ashamed to come out and admit it, because they've had some struggles. And I reached out to them. I was like, you know what? I said, my co-host and I, we've actually been very open about our own
Mhm.
struggles,
Yep.
with both mental health issues and, you
Yeah.
know, being sober, because this coming May, it'll be 10 years for me without drinking.
The end of this month, it will be, let me think. I don't want to say wrong. 22 years, the end of this month.
Oh wow.
Yep. Yep. So, and he was very grateful to hear from us. And I was like, yeah, I mean, so I'd like to collaborate with them at some point. And also some of the other non-wrestling podcasts. There were some guys that I met actually at that very show, Justin, from the
Yeah.
Mixtape podcast.
Yep. I mean, I
Yep.
listen to them. I haven't
Yep.
got a chance to reach out to them because, like I said, after that event we had, like I said, it was kind of a rocky road. You know a little bit about it. I
Yeah.
tried to relaunch it a little bit, then I end up getting hurt, and I was like, every time I stepped away for some sort of reason, I'm like, I have to get back to doing this. Like this is what keeps me going. This is like a hobby that is now a job and a career.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's still a lot of fun. I mean,
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
there was another wrestling podcast, the Dad World Order podcast.
That's right.
The
Yep.
guys,
Yep.
they're also
Mhm.
based out of, I think more northern Kentucky than Cincinnati. But I mean, these guys, I mean, they actually travel like all
Yeah.
over the place as well. Some great guys. And it was funny because I actually met them at Covington, a few months ago. And
Mhm.
it was actually the Halloween show they did. And I had,
Yeah.
my shirt on, they had theirs on, got talking. It's like, oh yeah, what's your Twitter? When we were already following each other on Twitter. So, we were already networked together. But yeah, but that's another great podcast. They are normally live on Sunday nights. I want to say 9, but I could be off. And I think they're also live on, I think it's actually Thursday nights at 8, which we normally record at 8:30. So
Mhm.
a little bit of a conflict there if we wanted to, kind of watch them, but we were also recording ours. But you could also still go check them out. I mean, those guys, I mean, they are really, really, really big wrestling fans. But
Yes.
another couple podcasts, and these are actually the same two guys who are in both these podcasts, the True Crime Cast and Bless Their Hearts.
Mhm.
These are the guys, they've been on Jericho's podcast. In fact, they were just on
Mhm.
one recently that they recorded like months ago when it finally aired. But
Mhm.
they were talking about like crime in wrestling. And some of the like the female luchador down in Mexico, who she was also a serial killer of old ladies, like outside the ring.
Okay.
Mhm.
They're talking about let's see, one that Ricky Morton actually trained him, and he was in ECW, and he ended up, um, well, I mean, unfortunately, kind of similar to Benoit. I mean, he actually killed his family, then killed himself.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then there was a Hardbody Harrison.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got to talk about him and the things he was doing.
Yeah.
Which you just have to look him up. But he was pretty disgusting. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of human trafficking involved. I just leave it at
Mhm.
that. But
Yeah.
but they
So
were. Go ahead.
you're still mentioning podcasters, so
Oh no,
I
you're fine.
apologize. I
Yeah.
didn't mean to.
Yeah,
I
because
was just gonna ask Doylan a question when we got a chance because I was just picking up my brain. I'm like just curious and asking him, how far down you live in Kentucky, correct?
Yes.
How far down?
I'm in West Paducah, Kentucky.
And how? Okay, and is there how close hypothetically would that be to like Lexington or Louisville?
It's about Lexington is probably about 5 hours from me because I think Louisville's about 4 hours from here.
Okay. No, the only reason why I was asking is because we talk about NWF. You've had NWF talent on here before, and I've noticed that especially following them, they like to travel, and a lot of them travel down south.
Yep.
To like Lexington, and so I was just like, is there like a chance that you've ran into them?
No, because I
promotion or whatnot.
because I don't get to Louisville or Lexington much. Lexington hardly at all. I haven't really been to Louisville since my kids were on a swim team, and that's been several years ago. We used to go to swim meets there, but I haven't been to either place in quite a long time. So no, I haven't been able to run into anybody.
And I think the closest that I know of personally that any of the NWF wrestlers that are on the current roster have actually gone close to Dwaylen while they've been part of the NWF was actually probably Big Mama when she was down there for an NWA show in Oak Grove. And
Oak Grove, yeah.
And that's still what, a good hour away for you at least?
It's a good, because Hopkinsville is like an hour 15, so at least a good hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes to Oak Grove, depending on traffic.
Yeah, which means you have to drive that hour and a half back.
Yeah,
that's always the.
Yeah.
I mean,
you basically got to go all the way to Hopkinsville and then hang that right and then go all the way to.
Yep.
I was just thinking about that because that may be a whole nother, episode for you guys, maybe down the low, but they're starting to travel. Like you're starting to see the guys that we were talking about heavily last year. They're starting to expand their region, where they can perform at, and that's only good for business, especially good for NWF. But yeah, I was just curious if you may have ran into any of them on a promotion or just down the, because they do travel.
If I had to answer for Joel, I'd say not yet, but he's trying.
Yeah.
But and I guess it's one of the fortunate things about Mount Orab. All of a sudden, they started doing wrestling shows again in Mount Orab because I guess they used to back in the day. But now they're doing them right here, so it's 10 minutes away from my house. And I'm like, woohoo! But like next weekend, or this coming weekend, they're going to be down in Covington, and I'm almost obligated to go. Kind of, sort of, just because I just know of some things that I'm going to predict are going to happen. So I want to see it, and I want to record it for Dwaylen, so I can have it up, and so he can say, "Hey, look," and but it's just also just going to be me and my son this upcoming weekend because my wife is flying down to Orlando. It's part of her travel agent, like they do a retreat every year. But of course, my daughter is also down in Orlando, so it's going to be a, kill two birds with one stone. She's going to be able to hang out with her daughter and also do the travel thing. And so it's just going to be me and him. Excuse me. He doesn't always necessarily enjoy going to the wrestling shows. Because they're not big names is the way you put it. I'm like, so
it's like, how do you think the big names got to be big names?
Yes,
like exactly. This is how they started.
Give him 5 years and you'll see Rex and AEW or something like that. Like, yeah.
No, I think I could see Rex. I could definitely see Nikki Victory because Roger himself said, he told us on the show when we interviewed him that he said she has no ceiling.
Right.
Riley, I think we'll see her, one day, as long as she keeps on. And trajectory she's going.
Noah, they all, everyone, the entire class right there needs to be, heading up, at least spreading out their rings a little bit, whether it's Impact, AEW, WWE. I guess that, that's one thing I do enjoy watching when you watch AEWs that do promote, and they continue giving talent a shot. And I'm sure WWE does that on house, on house shows and whatnot. But, AEW promotes like they brought up Nikki Victory a handful of times. She's like in a cycle, on matches. And I'm like, WWE, you're kind of behind the game. You gotta have to step it up a little bit because, the only way you're going to get them out there is if you actually get them out there.
And Lord Crew is another one. He's been on AEW Dark a few times. And he is all over the place. If you follow him on social media at all, he's always traveling.
Their last recent one was Star Rider.
Was Star Rider on Dark?
Was that? I want to say that was on Dark a couple weeks ago.
Really? How did I miss
Unless
Star
it was
Rider?
on a different promotion, I don't remember. It was like a 6-man tag match, and they lost. But
I'm gonna have to go back through Dark and old Dark episodes to see if I can find it.
I know he's been going down to OVW. There's a lot of them that have been going to OVW.
Maybe.
because I mean, Cincinnati and Louisville is only, a 2-hour drive, and a lot of them, they live in Kentucky anyway, so it's
Yeah.
even less of a drive. So yeah, because Noah, I believe he lives in Walton, Kentucky. Which is
That sounds right. Yeah.
yeah. But like, well, Big Mama, she lives up in Westchester.
Yeah.
That's in Ohio. That's a little bit of a drive. I mean, you're talking like 2.5 hours, from her house. But like, so because a lot of the women were down in OVW week and a half ago, and they had a big event down. It was a woman's only event, and so they had them come in, and Big Mama, Tasha, she actually told me, she's like, it was a great time, So, but.
I was just trying to see if I could find it. It was like sometime, I want to say in December, November. Like it was recently. Like it wasn't that long ago. I'm about not 85% confident that.
Now you got me curious.
But and I apologize if I'm wrong, but I mean, I remember seeing him. I tuned in just to see him.
Right.
On the show, because AEW Dark kind of just comes and goes so fast on Mondays.
Yeah,
like I don't get a chance to even watch it, even though I want to watch out. Want to watch like Nikki Victory's matches, but I was hoping to find it to show you guys, but I'm like, you don't get a whole lot here on the AEW Dark, previews.
Oh, let's see. I just Googled Star Rider AEW Dark, and it's saying Dan Adams, Star Rider, and Facade AEW Dark Elevation. It was a month ago, and it's in Jobbers of the Week, uploaded by Jobber Brothers. So it's actually not the AEW Dark official YouTube channel. It's another one.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, I guess they were on there like a month ago. So, but yeah, Star Rider. Yeah, he's another great one. He's small compared to the rest of them, but I mean, he's like what you expect a small wrestler to be. Yeah, he can move.
And he can hold his own.
Yep, a lot of aerial stuff. I think Adam Swayze, I think he could actually be.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
He is. I mean, okay. So is it wrong to say that Adam Swayze is the MJF of NWF?
Oh no, I think that's pretty accurate.
Oh, I think that's awesome.
But the thing is you got to like it. You have to. I mean, you have to enjoy what he's putting out there, because he makes you hate him on a different level.
Yep.
To the point where it's like you have to watch what's next. And
exactly.
You actually want him to win.
It's like the old school mentality of he gets you worked up enough to where people are willing to pay money to see if he's going to get beat up or not.
And that's what gravitated us to like NWF at the beginning, because the Great King Titan and Sean Evans was doing that so successfully, and that's what it's all about. When you can make that connection, between the sport of professional wrestling and to being in the crowd, that's the reason why you become a wrestling fan, right? I mean, is that connection, is the comparison. A lot of people refer, to soap operas and to theater play and to, football and baseball. And we refer to wrestling because that's what gravitates us. It keeps us going.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
And I think that really answered the questions.
It really did.
Why we are wrestling fans.
Yep. It really did.
That was, thanks, Justin. That was actually perfect.
That was perfect.
Yeah. But Dwaylen, do you have anything else?
No, as always, it has been a pleasure talking to you. I'm glad you were able to come back on the show, and look forward to you coming back on as a guest again.
Absolutely. Anytime you guys need me, thank you guys. I mean, late at night, early in the morning, just, shoot me a text. I go, whatever you guys need. I'm always here. Definitely supportive. Love the podcast, your guys' work. Can't wait to see more stuff. There's a lot of, topics that I'm looking forward to you guys talking about that is, surfaced since the beginning of the year. So, you guys are a 1-2 combination that kind of feed off each other, and it just seems to work, And that's what's so great about, the Armchair Booking Podcast is, it works.
Oh, we appreciate that, Justin.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
35 years worth of friendship helps too.
Yeah.
And so it's over what 8-hour drive to get to one another. So
yeah.
I think
it was about 9.
9 hours from here. When last time I saw you, which is almost 9 years ago to the day.
Yeah.
I don't know, Justin, if you've heard about this, where Dwayne had an unfortunate they had a house fire.
Yeah.
And they lost everything but the clothes on their back and their cat.
Yep. And my car. That was it. That was it.
And so I took up a collection of stuff here. And of course people were doing it there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I drove it down, all the way from here. So it was about 5.5, maybe 6 hours.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Because you were in Murray at the time.
Yeah, I was in Murray at the time.
Yeah.
So
and so went down there, we got to hang out, brought all the stuff, got to meet all the other people bringing stuff.
And,
that I got, stayed in the hotel because I think y'all were just like jam packed because they had just moved y'all into that other apartment.
Oh yeah, we had just gotten the other apartment, and we had. I mean, we didn't even have. I think we had just gotten living room furniture, maybe. But
yeah, you had a couch. I remember that.
But I think that's all we had at the time.
Yeah,
because we hadn't got beds or anything yet.
Doesn't that just work so well? I mean, because here's the thing: when you're doing podcasting, the first thing I kind of think of, all right, you got to kind of be in the same room with each other. The fact that you guys have been doing this, 2+ years now, for a few years, and you guys have been able to keep this distance, this long distance, and still maintain a consistency, being able to work with each other's schedule. I mean, I think that's what just puts the icing on the cake when it comes down to Armchair Booking Podcast is, the fact that you could do it under any circumstances. I mean, that's whether, no matter what condition we're under, if someone's feeling sick or, even work, at work, stress is through the roof,
Yeah.
And oddly enough, what's kept us from recording has actually been more work on my end because
and just like some personal stuff that's come up on my end, but
and that's it's normally like a game time decision. It's like,
dude,
I'm still at the office.
Yeah.
And I'm not leaving probably for at least another hour.
Yeah. Too bad you just can't record from the office, to be honest.
I mean, I have thought about
especially Cubicle Podcast. I mean, you're the one over there. That's
it writes itself. I mean, there it is.
But I mean, yeah, Justin, thank you so much for coming on. This has been an absolute pleasure as always. If we can ever figure out a good time, for me and Dwaylen to come on yours.
Yeah.
Now 6 o'clock here is also 5 o'clock for Dwaylen.
Yeah.
So
it's a little early for me, but
but I mean,
so I will say this is that if you guys want to come on my show, is that I will also be acceptable because I know how early it is to do some sort of interview. I keep my interviews around 15-20 minutes. If they're longer than that, I'll throw in a break and just put along with my program. But the reason why I'll say that is because I'm doing a promotion where I just did like a rapid fire interview for like 18 people over the weekend, and starting tomorrow or Tuesday, I'm going to start implementing them into my show to help promote their product. So that's one thing I've had to become more flexible about. I've always even though these interviews had nothing to do with sports, it's a local promotion here. It's actually like a theater play that's taking place in Fairfield this weekend.
I caught that when you were advertising that today.
Yep. So I'll love more of that advertisement. I had to do the interviews on Friday and Saturday, and then I was able to kind of edit them, put them together. So like one of the there'll be 2 interviews tomorrow. So this is going to take up about like a good 40 minutes of the program. But that's could always work something out.
Okay.
Well, heck yeah. Good. So we're always look forward to going on your show as well. And but that's all we have for today. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. So Justin, my friend, until we could actually talk again, I'll go ahead and just say good night. Hey, God bless.
God bless.
Thank you.